Wardrobe for the Bass Tour Anglers podcast provided by Koppel Outfitters. Go have an adventure. Visit them online at www.koppeloutfitters.com and on social media at Koppel Outfitters. Well, get those life vests zipped and clipped, strap down those rods, and stow away those tackle bags because we are going fishing. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Bass Tour Anglers podcast. Thanks for being with us. Tacticam fisheye cameras make this podcast possible. Tacticam. This is the company that offers high-resolution action cameras for about half the price of what the other guys charge. We are proud to announce that we are now the Western representatives for ducket fishing. You know these guys, the strongest pro staff in all professional tournament fishing. If you have any questions about the ducket fishing lineup of pro-driven products, send us a DM on Instagram or go to our website, Bass Tour Anglers Podcast, and send us an email. We will get you an answer right away. If you're new here, please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and drop us a comment if you're so inclined. Our guest today is used to being on the other side of the microphone, as his Anglers Channel Insider podcast is produced weekly on anglerschannel.com. You also know him because of his photography, as he is the eye behind the lens in so many iconic Bassmaster, FLW, and Major League Fishing moments that have shaped the landscape for professional fishing. He's worked behind the scenes for companies like Strike King and currently serves as the president of anglerschannel.com. Chris Brown, welcome to the Bass Tour Anglers podcast. Thanks for being with us today.
Great to be here, Keith. Thanks so much for having me.
I haven't interviewed anybody from the media yet because it's a little competitive out there. You know what I mean?
Well, it's just a title. I mean, you know, I've been in this industry for 20 years, and I've done, I think, just about everything you could do besides fish the elites or the pro circuit or the classics. So I've enjoyed what I do, and it's just a title is all it is. So,
well, yeah. And I think that there's a certain amount of pride, let's say, amongst people that do podcasts and things like this that, anyway, say no more. Let's go on to the good stuff.
No,
here.
there is. You're right. I mean, there's a lot of, especially in this space, there's a lot of folks that are doing this now. I mean, yeah. And you know, we started the Anglers Channel Insider podcast. I guess we're in our 4th season now. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there were a handful when we started, and there's been probably 4 or 5 handfuls since. So, but it's all good. I mean, folks we've got one listener to our show that, I mean, every week he ranks all of his favorite shows, I think, and lets me know where we stand in that list. And I've yet to be number 1 on his list, but I'm aiming for it. So one day I will, I promise. So
that is great. Well, I'd just like to have him listen. That's where I am at this point. But anyway, hey, so Chris, what is it about professional fishing? I mean, you just mentioned the more podcasts there are, the more I want to listen, the more YouTube shows, the more I want to watch. What is it about professional fishing that makes us want to be right in the middle of it like this?
Well, I think it's 2 things. You know, probably when you and I were growing up, we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have social media, right? So we relied on Bassmaster magazine or the old FLW magazine. We relied on those when they came in, Bass Times, you know, Outdoor Life, and all the different outdoor magazines to kind of get our fix. And now it's everywhere. You can do it all over the place. And it's a great thing for the younger generation. I've got a 17-year-old that's gotten hot and heavy into it, and he loves it. And then he gets all, you know, he'll call me and say, "Daddy, have you seen so-and-so on YouTube?" And I'm like, yeah. He said, "Do you know him?" I said, "Yeah, for a long time." So it's kind of funny that way. But I learned a long time ago, fishing, team tournaments and BFLs and stuff that, man, I love this industry. I love the sport, but man, I don't know that I can catch 5 a day to make a living. Right. And back around 2001, 2002, I was offered a job to come work at Strike King Lure Company. And I'll never forget, because I started like on a Monday, and then on Wednesday, we left and went to Bull Shoals, Arkansas, or Bull Shoals Lake, or Lake Norfolk, sorry. Went over there, and actually, no, I apologize. It was like Ouachita. We went for a Professional Bass Fishing Hall of Fame tournament. I got to meet all these guys that I had looked up to, all my life, really, in fishing. And I got to meet them and fish with some of them. And they introduced me to the Strike King team as their new pro staff manager. And I'm like, you know what? I can do this. I can enjoy this industry and be on the backside of things and really love it. Right. And, it's like, it's the old adage, they say, if you work in the golf industry, you just don't golf anymore. Well, if you work in the fishing industry, you ain't going to fish a whole lot more anyway. So I get paid once a month, and I don't have to catch 5 fish a day to do it. And I like it that way. And we get to sit here and talk fishing and all this stuff every day. So it's a good thing. So
absolutely. I mean, it's a similar story. I mean, I was really good in my bass club, man. When I was in a bass club in the 80s, I was good. And I thought I would take it to the next level. And I tried, and I did. And I realized, gosh, the further I do this, the further away I get from the important things. And so I got to find another way to somehow be immersed in this that does not have me away from home forever.
Sure. Yeah, it was the same way for me. And, I got to work in what I called the world's largest tackle box there at Strike King for a number of years, and loved my time there, and have been in the industry ever since. And I've got a lot of good friends on both sides of the coin here, and just absolutely loved it. So,
so during the early 2000s, I was doing what we called back then internet radio.
Sure.
I think this is what a podcast became, because we did this. It's the same thing. We recorded this stuff and we posted it, and people allegedly listened to it. But that's about the time you were with Strike King. I think we probably talked, because I know at one point we were pursuing Strike King to advertise on our show. Sure. Didn't ever happen, but that's all right. What got you aimed towards the media, though? That seems to be a direction that you took.
Well, it's like I said earlier, I've done everything in this business, I think, besides, fish the elites. I traveled on the Elite Series for a while.
Yeah.
FLW circuit for sponsors and doing some of that. And, when I was at Strike King, I actually bought advertising for Strike King. So I was the guy that, I'm sure we dealt with that. You and I dealt with that with each other in that form and fashion. And so probably 2015 or so, I ran into John Byrne, who owns Anglers Channel. And I had bought advertising from John when I was at Strike King years ago, and kind of watched his company grow, watched what he does and his TV shows and like that. And we were just joking around. I was actually working for Rigid Industries at that time. And he kind of made a comment to me. He said, man, why don't you come run Anglers Channel for me? And I laughed. I said, well, I don't know that you can afford me. And we kind of joked about it. And sure enough, he made me an offer I couldn't refuse. And, I knew the advertising side. I knew the media side as a buyer. I didn't know it as a seller. And so I learned that pretty quick. And just got to be on this side of it. And I tell you, I've always done the behind the scenes stuff, at the classics and the cups, shooting photos and doing things like that for things that we did as a company. But to do it now as a official media, I guess you could say, that's a whole different deal. And I love it. It's a lot of fun. I have my own opinions on a lot of things, some good, some bad. But I mean, at the end of the day, we're just trying to make these guys famous, and we're trying to showcase the sport of fishing to the world and show them what it's all about. So.
We are talking to Chris Brown. He is the host of the Anglers Channel Inside podcast. You can listen to him on anglerschannel.com. Chris, the independent coverage of bass fishing plays a unique role within the sport because as an independent, you and I, we are able to inject our opinions on things. We're not tied to a company line. Talk about the importance of independent media involved in the bass fishing world.
Well, I think it's a good thing, especially for the younger generation, right? I mean, we talked about this a few minutes ago. The guys on YouTube, the guys, the kids watching YouTube, social media, things like that, reading Bassmaster. I think it's a good thing. They can come to English Channel. They can learn about every, basically every club that we can find, every tournament trail we can find, and we talk about and promote all of them. And, you listen to our podcast and I'm a little one-sided sometimes on certain things, but I think we all are, right? We've all got our, especially those of us that have been in the industry long enough, we've got our favorites and things like that. But I mean, being an independent, I'm not, you asked me that question over the phone prior to prior to us talking, having this podcast. And, it's funny, working and coming up through my early years of my career, you had a lot of guys that were tied to certain media outlets.
Absolutely.
You had guys that were tied to certain companies.
Yeah.
And it was really hard to showcase new products to some of those guys at one time, right? But now most everybody's, independent and it works really nice. And I think it's great for the younger generation to really kind of get an unbiased opinion on what's going on out there.
I like to think that I look at sports like baseball. The media is not a branch of Major League Baseball. And so if Major League Baseball steps out of line, as they do sometimes, if you look at some of the suspensions and things like that are not consistent, you've got a media there that can keep them in line. And I really think bass fishing needs that.
Well, you're right to a degree, I think. But, as you put it in a couple of your questions here, these guys do pay to play. And
right.
It's a little different world. The media has to hold these guys accountable. And, a lot of it goes back to rules and regulations and things like that. I mean, you play on an NBA basketball court or on an NFL football field or a Major League Baseball field, and you've got umpires, you've got referees, you've got guys that are watching your every move. And in a boat, you don't, for, elite series and pro circuit, they've got, they're kind of judging themselves, or they have to, kind of self rule themselves. And then of course, BPT is a little different. They've got a judge in the boat, but I mean, it's a little different deal, I think. So.
Well, with that, let's take a look at some of the big stories in the sport this year. There's good, there's bad, there's ugly. Let's start with one thing that I think is kind of ugly still about this sport.
Sure.
And for years, and maybe not as much recently, but I can remember in the mid 2005, 2006, 2007, bass fishing loved to compare itself to NASCAR and loved to compare itself to the PGA. And I always felt like, hey, listen, you can't really compare yourself to these sports, because in those sports, the organizations and the sponsors are providing the prize pool. Bass fishing, it's still the anglers putting money into the pot to get paid.
Yeah, it is. And, from the NASCAR standpoint of it, I see the demographic, right?
Yeah.
We've got a lot of the same demographic there.
Absolutely.
That kind of share the space. And that's our guy. I mean, in reality, that's our guy. The golf side, that's a little tougher to look at. But, I don't know. I know a lot of our guys golf, and not a lot of our guys are country club material. But that's just my opinion. I'm sure not. So, I mean, that's my opinion. But, I mean, the NASCAR side I see, and, I mean, the sponsorships are there. The tournament organizations are getting money from the venues, from the places they go, but these guys still have to fund their way. And I mean, even down to where BPT's now having to fund their way, those guys didn't at first. And that was the big draw for a lot of those guys. Hey, no more entry fees, but right. That can't last forever. And I don't know why that is in the sport. That's the way it's been forever. I mean, you've paid your fair share of entry fees. So have I. And that's just kind of the way this ball rolls in the sport, apparently. So,
Yeah. So we may not be solving that at this point, but I do think it's important to bring it forward because bass fishing is not NASCAR yet. We do have wrapped boats, we do have wrapped vehicles, and I really think that you're right. The same eyes are on the same things. I'm not understanding why that doesn't transfer to the same kind of money. I mean, I know that it's not as much as spectator sport. I know you don't have like ticket sales and things like that, but there's a lot of people that fish in this country.
Well, there are. And, I think you look at, the teams that they have in NASCAR and the amount of money that are involved there. Those sponsorships aren't cheap,
Right.
for those guys to sponsor those cars. And they employ a lot of people in those shops. And, fishing's a little different deal in the standpoint that, these guys are their own pit crew. They're their own, they do everything on their own. And, like I said earlier, that's why I'm glad. I mean, I'd love to fish at that level, but I'm glad I don't have to catch 5 a day to do it, and I can still stay in this industry. So.
That is for sure. All right. You got to love what John Cox has done this year. He is a throwback to the days when guys would fish a BASS event, pack up and drive to the FLW event that was the following week and compete there as well. I really thought that those were bass fishing's golden years because you had, I mean, my favorite pros against, they were fishing against each other. It wasn't a matter of being on one tour or the other tour. It was head to head just about every week. Not everybody did it, but a lot of guys did.
Right.
We've got a saying on our podcast of when somebody John Coxes something, it means that they've done something that nobody else can do.
Absolutely.
I really think John bridges the divide between the tours. What are your thoughts about this? About what he's done this year?
He does. He's an extraordinary guy in the fact that, I mean, he just wants to fish, right? I've heard this for years. Guys are complaining about, hey, I just want to fish more. And that's why you see them fishing, the pro circuit Toyotas. You see them fishing the elites and the opens. And it's, maybe for some guys it's to qualify for the classic or it's to, requalify for the elites. But, for the most part, the guys just want to fish.
Yeah.
They just want to fish more. I mean, here we are, in the middle of August and the elites are done. Pro circuit's done. BPT's almost done. We've just got a few, championships left to do in the opens, and guys just want to fish still. There's still a lot of fish to be caught. I really got spoiled. I think we all got spoiled last year.
Absolutely.
And Bass had to move their schedule around. And I applaud Bass for actually finishing out their year.
Yes.
But, we had fishing on into late October, early November. And I'm like, dude, this rocks. Right. And we had it years ago. You and I saw it with the old bass stuff that started in the fall and went through the spring and took the summer off. And so, Cox has done something that not a lot of guys can do from a family standpoint, from a financial standpoint. But I mean, man alive, he's got it going on for sure. And I love to fish, but dude, I think he's done some 30, 40-day stretches there of solid fishing. That's pushing it, dude. It really is.
Couple of weeks back on the podcast, I put together a little map and it's very crudely done, of course, but it showed him where he was going to be fishing this next year. And, sure. And the BPT events aren't even out yet. So, I mean, I can't imagine what he's going to do next year.
The BPT stuff's not going to be on top of pro circuit events. So right. That's good. Problem is they're probably going to be on top of some elite series events. And, I know we've had some issues with rules and things like that. And I do applaud Bass for kind of, standing their ground on their rule book. I hate it for John, but it didn't hurt him, right? He still qualified for the classic. So, he squeaked in, on that one pretty good. But I mean, I applaud him for what he's doing, but at some point, I mean, you got to look at it and say, am I doing too much? What do I need to do to make sure I'm qualifying for what I need to qualify for and go from there? But it's been fun to follow him around. I mean, 'cause it's one of those where's Waldo things, right? It's like, where's John going to be this week? And I mean, we have that conversation almost weekly on our podcast too. It's like, where's Cox? Where's he at? Yep. Where's he going to be? And I'm texting my guys, my buddies going, hey, is he there or is he there? Where's he at? Right. And he's leaving one and going to the other. And, some of these deals, he got a little close, but some of these deals have worked out for him pretty good. So it's been fun to watch.
When the season started, he and I were talking and he was thinking about possibly in Florida fishing the first day of one event there to get points and then going to another event. God.
I want to see his calendar, right? I want to see the calendar he and his wife have and their kids. And because, the kids, they fall asleep in one state and wake up in another in the back of that truck. So maybe you should invest in an RV, John. Maybe you should, do something like that. But.
Absolutely. All right. Moving right along. The National Professional Fishing League is another big story this year. It gives us more events to watch, some new faces to learn about, some really interesting tournament format changes that I like. It kind of has its own identity already, just 5 or 6 events into things. John Sokup has used this platform to become a major force in fishing this year and to showcase his business. What do you think? Is there room for more tours like this?
I don't think so. I think this is probably the limit right now for what they're doing. I was very, very skeptical of the MPFL when it first came out. Just from the standpoint of at that time, we were like a year past the split, as I like to call it, and a lot of stuff going on. And, but, as they started to build their field, I've interviewed and talked to a number of their anglers on their side, and a lot of great guys over there, a lot of guys that you need to get to know. And, Sukup's been one of them, winning 2 of those events this year already. Spent a lot of time with Al and Paul and those guys with the league, as they call it, and actually went down to Eufaula to see their first event. And they pulled me aside and said, "Hey, what do you?" Because we with English Channel, we go to a lot of different events across the country, and they said, "What do you like? What do you don't like? What can we change?" And we had a long conversation about some stuff, and it wasn't just Chris Brown's ideas; it was just everything as a whole, and really had a great conversation. And it's really been fun to watch that thing grow and watch them get bigger. I do hope they can cap their field out at 125 this year. I think that'll be fun to see. But the way they promote their guys, good buddy of mine, Mark Pizer with Trick Steps there, fishing that deal. And he raves about it. And so the guys are happy with it. And that's the biggest thing, is finding anglers who are happy with their tournament trail, right?
Oh yeah,
and where they work, and those guys love it. So I mean, we're behind the league. We talk about them all the time as much as we can, and we promote their tournaments and make sure that we showcase their PR stuff, and they do a great job with it. I'm impressed. So.
Well, the league is certainly part of the Bass Tour Anglers Podcast Angler of the Year race that's going on. Those anglers are right in the middle of our season-long point total that we're keeping track of. I agree with what you're saying there. Now, tour cuts. We're waiting to hear the fate of 23 pros on the BASS Elite Series, possibly some on the Bass Pro Tour side. My question is, if pros are still going to be forced to pay entry fees and fund their own prize pools, why do any of these organizations need to cut?
Well, you've got to have new blood come in, right? You got to have folks come in to make it more exciting. And again, this is my opinion. This is just my thoughts. You've got to move some folks around, and you've got some guys that have been at the bottom for, I'd say a long time, but a long time. Some guys who haven't cut a check all year, and nothing wrong with them, nothing against them. They've had some ups and downs. I get it. That's fishing. But at some point in time, you can only be at the bottom for so long before you got to, reevaluate your life and say, hey, what do I need to be doing? And this is just a natural attrition. I think you got to move some folks around so you have room for guys to come up. The biggest thing, the way it used to be, I know you remember this, FLW had 170, 180, 200 boats, on their tour for forever. And it was the biggest deal. And you go buy a Ranger and you pay your entry fees, and by God, you're a pro, right? Right. So, 4 or 5 years ago at ICAST, one year they came out and they said, hey, all right, starting now, you have to re-qualify for the tour, or you have to qualify for the tour. And dude, I applauded FLW and I applauded Joe Opegger and those guys that were their time. I said, man, this is perfect. You guys set your field. Now you're starting to move into what I would call an elite level or a pro level, because you can't just pay your way in to come play anymore the way it used to be. So they had guys qualifying, and that was a good deal. And then the BPT came, and we had the split and all that stuff, and they had a set field, and Bass kind of had a set field, and FLW had a set field, and now we were truly in that kind of pro rank. And you had your good, better, best, I think, with those 3 tours. But I mean, you've got to have that, I think, just to move, old blood out and new blood in, and make sure that you have the most competitive field you can have. I know guys are paying to be there, but I think that's what you have to do personally.
Okay, Chris, I agree with what you've said there, but then you've got some situations where there are some tremendous old-time anglers,
Yep,
legends, if you will, who have exemptions, who are also at the bottom of those lists, and they're not getting bumped.
Yeah, that can go both ways, Keith. It really can. And there's some that I agree need to go, and there's some that I agree probably need to stay. That's a hard call to make, and I don't know what the right answer there is. Right, I really don't, and I'm not going to name names, but you're right. There's some guys on legend exemptions that well, there's a couple of guys now that won't requalify that'll get legend exemptions, and you're like, God Almighty, really? But I mean, what do you do? I mean, you got guys that are classic champs, Angler of the Year champs. I'm like, what do you do there? And that's a tough call to make. I'm glad I'm not having to make it, but part of me says they need to move on. Maybe they need to go to an MPFL. They need to go back to the Opens or whatever. And part of me says, let's give them another year or two, let them retire gracefully or whatever. And then, but I don't know what that right answer is there. I really don't.
Well, I don't want to keep pulling at this thread, but I haven't seen consistency in the numbers. We had the elites, for example, that had 75 one year. They had 113, I want to say, another year. And there's really, let's come up with a number. And I guess we land on, maybe this is the year we're coming up with a number and landing on it. But anyway,
I've been told that, on good faith that, there is going to be a number that, what we think is going to get cut is probably going to be more than what we think that number is going to be. We don't know what that final number is going to be yet. But you're right. I hope they pick a number, stay with a number, and, let's hold true to that. And I understand the COVID drops that are happening, and guys have to drop a tournament, and that changes some things. I get it. Right. What I don't want to see happen is like, oh, well, so-and-so, he's going to fall out this year. So we got to find a way to get him back in. And, guys start bending rules to make stuff happen. And then you're like, guys, I mean, at what point you set your rules 2-3 years ago, whatever it was, and you said, we're going to pull X amount out, we're going to put X amount in. And now it's like, and that's in one league that's changing. That I had that conversation with one of the PR guys. He said, well, we're going to pull, top 10 from this, but if they're already in this group, then we'll just pull, the remainder from this group. And then the remainder will come from, the higher up. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't give these guys any chance to really, excel or move up, or doesn't give them any opportunity for growth or give them something to really shoot at. Right. Because you don't know what's going to happen. So I don't know. I want to see consistency across the platform. I want, if you say what, do what you're going to say, right. Or say what you're going to do and then do it and be done with it. And if it knocks out an owner, it knocks out an owner. If it knocks out a legend, it knocks out a legend. They know the rules going in. Don't change the rules halfway through the year because we're all on this slippery slope of, well, somebody might not qualify. We got to make sure they stay in. I don't care if they qualify, they qualify. If they're not, they're not. I mean, that's my opinion personally. So,
Chris, these are the conversations I have with myself all the time. It is so refreshing to be able to talk to somebody.
I tell you what, I've got 2 guys that are on my podcast with me, the English Channel Insider, David Zhang and Kenneth Grover. And we have a text thread going. And some nights I go to bed and I wake up to 30, 40 texts of questions. And I'm like, guys, we're thinking about this way too hard. So
somebody has to.
For sure.
All right. Got to ask you this question because you're not maybe you're not quite as an old timer as I am, but let's face it, forward-facing electronics, live-facing electronics, a lot of opinions out there. Should they be banned?
No, they should not be banned.
I agree.
I think that's a conversation for a whole nother show. I don't know.
I know.
It's like anything else, right? I mean, if you got to be good at multiple things now, and whether it's drop shotting, Carolina rigging, cranking, or flipping, you got to be good at multiple things. And electronics over the past few years has just become one of those things that you have to get better at as an angler.
I think you have to, you're exactly right. I've had conversations with a couple of pros that are also guides that are using these things all the time. And they're telling me that the fish are starting to figure this out.
Sure.
Fish are feeling the pings. And when they're out there and they feel them, guys are seeing these things leave their scope rather than follow their baits.
And now you've got companies that are making baits specific to forward-facing sonar, which, I saw that and I thought, how can this be a thing? But dude, it's the fishing industry, right? Everything's a thing. I mean, we go to ICAST every year and it's like, how many ways can you improve a spinnerbait? How many different colors of sexy shad can you paint on a crankbait, right? So been there, done that, got that t-shirt. It doesn't surprise me anymore, but no, they should not be banned. You just, I think they're a pro for some and a con for others.
Change. It's inevitable. To improve, you must adapt. The sport is evolving. A paradigm shift is a fundamental change of basic concepts. Don't get left behind. Introducing Paradigm. Paradigm Reels by Duckett Fishing. Pro-driven.
Folks, we are talking to Chris Brown. You can listen to his Insider podcast on anglerschannel.com. This is such an exciting time for the sport. I mean, controversy or not, it's exciting. Jacob Wheeler, when I went off the broadcast, looks like Jacob Wheeler is going to win his third event unless something has changed dramatically. But Jacob Wheeler, Ott Defoe, Brandon Palaniuk, they may not win every event they fish, but these guys have set the bar and they're setting the bar higher and higher. Are there any other names out there that you think that are kind of in that ballpark?
Gosh, there's so many young up and comers that are doing some really cool things. They may not win every week, or every year, but you look at a Patrick Walters, a Lee Livesay, you look at another one that comes to mind. I followed him this year just because of his dad, Lawson Hidden, over on the I mean, kid made the title, right? Qualified for that. And talking about having to live up to your name. I mean, your dad's Dion, your granddad's Guido, and I mean, folks see Hidman, up in the Ozarks. They're like, well, my God, he's going to do something. So you've got a lot of guys that are up and coming. You got a lot of younger guys too, especially like on a pro circuit that we don't know who they are, but they're coming. We talked to Cody Pike last week on our podcast, and great kid. I mean, absolutely great kid. I can call him a kid because to me he is, but I mean, great kid. And a lot of these guys have really kind of come out of the woodwork and are doing well. But Jacob, I mean, I turned it on a little bit ago too before we recorded this, and I saw the weight, the score tracker, and I said, you know what?
Here we go again.
Jacob's going to win. I'll wait for the press release. Right, I got other things to do today, but nothing against him. But yeah, I mean, it's he's going to win. It's good for his sponsors. He's right up there as well. And of course, Palaniuk. A quick little story about Palaniuk. Years and years and years ago, I was at Strike King. This before Brandon fished the Bass Nation stuff, and back before social media, we had email, right? I mean, and snail mail. But I got an email from a young man from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I was pro staff director at Strike King, marketing director there. And he went on about all the things he was fishing, the stuff he was doing in his area. And, I'm scratching my head going, gosh, I've got Denny Brower, George Cochran, Kevin Van Dam, Menendez. I got all Hackney. I got all these big names on my pro staff. And this guy wants a pro staff spot. And I'm like, I can't even pronounce his last name. Who is this kid, right? From Idaho. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do with a kid from Idaho? And I had been to Coeur d'Alene. I know where he's from. I've been there before on business trips. And I'm like, what am I going to do with a kid, from Idaho on my pro staff? And so I very casually, I wrote him back and I said, dude, I love your enthusiasm. I appreciate the email. I just don't have a spot for you right now. And I didn't. And lo and behold, about 4 years later, I go to the Bassmaster Classic in New Orleans, and I'm like, they announced this kid's name on day one of takeoff. There was a fog delay, and I'm like, why does that name sound familiar? And I went back to my email and I found it. And so I'm the guy that passed on Brandon Polinick. All right. And Brandon and I are tight. We're really good friends now. And he reminds me of that. But he did tell me this, that I was the only one of all the resumes he sent out. I was the only one to reply to his email. And so that was a big deal for him. And, and so Brandon and I go way back. Brandon's doing some stuff that, I mean, mentally, he's there. Yep. And I've known him and Tiff for a long, long time. They used to come through Gunnersville and stay at the house when I lived in Scottsboro, and a lot. And when I was at Rigid, we worked together a lot. And so we spent a lot of time together, and to see them get married and to see kind of his whole life is balance, and the way he does things, from his fishing to, professional career to his personal self, everything he does is for a reason. And there's no wasted time or energy in his life. I can tell you that. Great kid. And it's going to be fun to watch him for a long, long time. He's going to win a classic. Oh, yeah. He's going to win. And he's, I know Ike just did it with the Bass Nation kayak deal. He's won everything you can win, on that side. Pond is going to find a way to do that, probably do it better somewhere along the way. So.
There's another name out there. He's currently leading our Bass Tour Anglers podcast, Angler of the Year race. That's Dakota Hebert. Mm-hmm. He is fishing. He fishes the pro circuit, Major League Fishing pro circuit, but he fishes every Toyota Series event he can get into. I think he's fished like 19 events this year.
Yeah, I met Dakota at the Cup in Hot Springs when Thrift won, I think 3 years ago. I was on my time hop today, actually, on my phone, but met Dakota there. Great kid, kind of followed him along. He's one of those names you always see. It may not be top 10 every time, but He's top 25, right? He's always up there and always doing well. I believe he qualified for the BPT for next year too, if those rules stay the same. I don't know.
Well, he and I were just talking about that, and he's not sure. There's a couple of, because they average it over 2 years, and it gets fuzzy. But
the rules I got was it was a 2-year average, or this year if it was a better than I didn't get it. I've read the rules. I don't know. And here's the thing, Keith. I'm a stats guy. So I started doing Excel spreadsheets, right? So I can tell you the last 3 years of BPT and who's coming, who's going, who's doing what. And I started to do the pro circuit guys, and I got all the points and stuff in there. And then I started reading the rules, and I contacted my buddy Joe Opager at MLF, and I said, so tell me how this works and this works. And he went through a mathematical equation that, I mean, dude, I'm just no Alabama boy. I'm redneck as they come. I lost, He lost me when it got past 2+2, right? And so I'm like, okay, you know what? I'll just wait for you to put the list out, and then we'll move from there, because I don't know. I don't understand it anymore. So.
Yeah, I know Dakota is really close, and I hope he gets on there, because he is a strong angler.
He is.
Speaking of Bass Pros and content, this is another thing that I really have enjoyed about the evolution of the sport. It seems like just about everybody now is a content creator. Some of their shows are better than others, but certainly, I mean, I watch Brandon's. Whenever one of his episodes drop, it's one of the first things I watch. But the Zaldanes and Scott Martin, just about everybody has some kind of a not a podcast, but I guess it's a vlog. I got to get my terms right, but a vlog of what they do. That's cool stuff.
It's awesome stuff. And, and I know when a lot of guys, because, when I was at Strike King, we did Strike King's Pro Team Journal, and I was heavily involved with a lot of that, helping out with boats and production, things like that. And that was one of the cool things. And back then in the early 2000s, everybody was on TV, right? Everybody was trying to do something on TV. Scott Martin, Joe, there's a couple other ones that did it. Mercer. I mean, everybody had a TV show back then. They still do. Hank Parker, Shaw Grigsby, all those. But, looking at your question, does everybody have to hire a film crew? And they don't. I think only certain guys can do that, right? Zaldane's one of them. And Zaldane and Trait have a great story going back years and years on how they both started fishing and what they do and how they work together. Polinick, obviously, I mean, he lives in that camper 9 months out of the year, and just Kyle Vandiver, his videographer, is probably one of the best in this business. Yeah. And you got guys that are doing that, and they're really, really good. Scar Martin's guys are good. But I think more than anything, I heard this, I read this somewhere, or heard this on another interview. I heard a pro say, and I won't say from which circuit he's from, but I heard a pro say that he hates social media. And to me, that's that. Years ago, I changed jobs and went to a position in the hunting industry, and I had an IT guy tell me that social media was just a fad, and it was going to be going away soon. And I scratched my head, and I thought, I have made the wrong career choice here if this jackwad thinks that it's going away, because it's not, right? It's going to stay. Yeah. Same thing for these pros. You can't, social media has become part of your life. If you are sponsored by anybody, social media is a part of your life now. And I mean, just I'm not a big social media fan either, but for Angler's Channel, for our podcast, for our website, for the things that we do, you have to be involved in social media. You have to be. And if you're a pro that wants to grow your brand and wants to help your sponsors, don't hire a film crew, but run a GoPro every now and again, right? Yeah. Make a couple of posts, show some stuff that is unique to you. You got them, I got them. Everybody's got their own little tips, tactics, techniques, little crazy things we do. I throw a Carolina rig, Keith. I admit it. I'm a Carolina rigaholic, and I admit it, right? I'm good with that. A lot of us don't like it, but I'll talk about it on some stuff. Talk about it. Don't hate social media. Utilize it for what it's there for, and help grow your brand. But no, not everybody has to have it, but I love watching that stuff. It's really cool. One of my favorite TV shows way back in the mid 2000s was NASCAR 365. Yes, I'm an old NASCAR buff, but they picked a driver from Monday morning through Sunday night, and they followed him around all week long, right? Yeah. Harvick. I mean, all the guys, Earnhardt Jr., all the guys. And to me, that was the cool thing, to see the behind the scenes, right? To see what goes on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, on a Friday, flying to the track, qualifying, all the different things they're doing. I want to see behind the scenes. I want to be, that's what I want to get involved in. And so, to me, that was cool stuff. And to see stuff like Polinick and Zaldane and some of those things, it's a lot of fun to watch. And, I've got buddies that have kids that are fishing junior high and high school stuff. And I pull up and they see my English Channel wrap truck. They're like, "Hey, do you know Scott Martin?" I'm like, "I do." They're like, "Man, we love his YouTube stuff." So these kids follow it. They watch Absolutely. It. I've got some buddies, I think their kids have watched YouTube to the end. Right. And they're going back and replaying it. But I mean, they watch everything that's out there, and it's great. So I think that's the route to go.
Well, and I also think because of your experience of being the team manager for Strike King, I mean, if you don't do social media, I wouldn't imagine being able to get a conversation with you.
No, it's kind of funny because in 2007, I sat in my office, and my plant manager named Tim Pearson, he came up to my office, and we were sitting there at Strike King. We were looking at stuff, and he said, I asked him, I said, "Does Strike King need a Facebook page?" And he said, "Man, I don't know. That's a good question. I think we ought to start one just to see where it goes." Right. And now it's not like 300,000 fans, and they've gone crazy with it. But I remember starting that thing going, I remember hitting 10,000 fans and talking to retailers going, "Hey, can we do a discount? Because we're screaming, right? We're somebody now. We got 10,000 fans." And now it's a whole different world. But that's, that used to have what we call the thump factor, right? I mean, if you came to the end of the year and you had to let a pro staffer go, or you had to make room for another guy, you pull it out, you open your filing cabinet, right? Which not all the guys have anymore. You open the filing cabinet and you pull out, 2 files, and you take them and you throw them on the table, and whichever one made the louder thump, that's the guy you kept, right? Because that was full of tear sheets and stories and things like that. And now it's just, when you get recaps from the guys on, how many impressions they've made or what they've done. And it's a whole other world now for these guys, for sure.
This segment is brought to you in part by Swim Baits Plus. Are you looking for that hard to find swim bait? Are you looking for that impossible rare color? Are you looking for great prices? Visit them on Instagram at @SwimBaitsPlus. We're talking to Chris Brown. He is the host of the Insider Podcast on anglerschannel.com. The 2018 breakup of the tours, the big split, so much drama, BASS, MLF. American League, National League, Republican, Democrat, vaccination, anti-vaccination. Is bass fishing one more thing we can't talk about at the dinner table?
Yes, it is. It was a bad deal. It was a bad day. It was great for us, independent media guys, because we had internet numbers through the roof, right? We had all kinds of impressions and everything. So it was great for us. Was it good for the sport? It's yes and no. I think that both sides at the time, elites and the tour, they had guys that needed to go, kind of like the cuts was about earlier, guys that needed to go that never would, guys that they needed to make room for, to let new guys in. And then, they lost both sides lost some superstars, I think, that were kind of building things. But, the thing that got me about it was, so many people heard, well, Bass is dead or FLW is going to die and this and that. And, to me, being old school as I am with both tours and growing up watching them and following them and being there, when Van Dam won classics and when Thrift won the cup and, my buddy Brad Knight won the cup, being there at that stuff, it's like, they're not going to die. It's going to take them a little bit to come back, but when they do, they're going to be okay. Right. And there's enough guys out there, enough young guns out there fishing, that it's going to take a little while to get to know their names, but they're not going to die. So was it good? Yes, in a way. Was it bad? Yes, in a way, in my opinion. So
do you think we need a commissioner for the sport?
No, I don't think so. But what it would be nice to have is, now we're in I don't want to get, I don't want to get too crazy on this podcast like I do on mine, but now we've got a contest, kind of a contest on, who can put the better schedule out, how fast they can get it out, and who can put it on top of who, and, or who can do what, when, why, and where, and how. And it's like, what, guys, if we just stop trying to beat the other pro circuit, the other tour, the other elite series, whatever it is, and we just try to actually better the freaking sport of fishing for the young guys coming up, I think we'd be okay. Right. Yeah. But, all of this, I'm going to kill them. We're going to defeat them, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. That's the stuff that it drives me crazy. Let's just focus on being the best we can be at what we're doing and grow the sport and show how we're growing the sport. Right. Yeah. And stop trying to, conquer the world of professional bass fishing, because it's just not going to happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, it really is. It really is how can we make John Cox's life much more difficult, right?
Well, you've got, I think with that, you've got one group that says, we don't want them fishing that side. You got another group that says, we don't want them fishing that side. And then you got one group in there saying, hey, we want him fishing everything. Come on, let's do it all. And Cox is over there on his hands and knees begging, going, guys, just give me somewhere where I can fish all three. Just let me fish all three. Not everybody's going to do it, but when they announced the Elite Series schedule on that Monday of ICAST, and then the Pro Circuit schedule came out on that Thursday, I was really disappointed that we didn't see the BPT schedule. For the simple reason being, I just wanted to see, because normally they put that out close to the same time, and there was not a Pro Circuit. There was not a conflict between Pro Circuit and the elites, which was great, right? As a bass fan, as a fan of the sport like you are, Keith, I want to be able to turn my computer on Thursday morning and not have to decide, am I going to watch the elites? Am I going to watch BPT, or am I going to watch Pro Circuit or the NPFL? NPFL is doing it right. They sitting back going, hey, y'all put your schedules out. We'll work around you, because our guys want to fish the opens too, right? Our guys want to fish other stuff. So how can we all work together? I would love, and I've heard other podcast hosts say this, I would love to get the powers to be in a room and say, okay, I want this date. Let's do like a draft, like a fantasy draft, but make it like, okay, well, here's the month of January. I don't care where you go, but this is the date you can do it on. This is the date you can do it on. This is the date you can do it on, and get all three separated and then do it month by month and say, okay, here's what you can do. And I know there's a lot more to this, and guys are going to bash me about it, but man, if they would just have a conversation instead of trying to destroy each other, let's just have a conversation about where we can go, what we can do, and how we can work together. Not saying be friends about it, but just be cordial. And, let's make it the best sport we can for the fans.
Yeah.
Make it the best we can, because, gosh, man, I mean, I've got my opinions. I've got my favorites. If I turn on Thursday morning, I got to choose between one or the other. It's probably going to be the other, but everybody's got their viewership, so they say. So,
yeah.
And I do watch it all. We bounce around it all. We see it all, but, you get some that there's, 2 or 3 on a week, and it's like, man, just crazy. But.
Yep. Well, Chris, the Insider Podcast is one of the highlights of my week. On those rare weeks when it doesn't come out, on those rare weeks when it doesn't come out, I'm very frustrated, but I really look forward to it. What are some things we can expect from Anglers Channel in the next few months?
Sure. Well, we've got a lot going on. We're finishing up, obviously, a lot of tournament trails are getting ready to finish up with their championships are coming up. I know the BFL Super Regionals are coming up, and then, all that with the title coming up next week for Pro Circuit. We'll have some guys up there filming that. We do have our TV show that airs on Discovery Channel on Saturday mornings. That is kind of like a little mini sports center, so to speak, of bass fishing. We cover a bunch of different trails across the Southeast and across the country, really, and highlight those guys and do some different tips and tactics. So we got that coming out. We are coming up on our 200th episode, I believe. Wow. The end of August. So yeah, I never thought we'd get past 2 episodes, much less 200. So cut up on our 200th episode of the Anglers Channel Insider Podcast. And then we'll be cranking back up our Anglers Channel Rookie Podcast here a little bit later on this year when they start, when we finally get the list of who's qualified and who's going where. We'd like to talk to the rookies. We'd like to do a separate deal for them to kind of learn a little more about who they are and what they do. So
great idea.
Yeah, so you can go to the anglerschannel.com website. We have a podcast link there. You can click on that, or you can listen to it on all of your, just about anywhere you can get a podcast. We can put it there. And then I am personally working on one more show that I hope to debut around the 1st of October. And it's for guys like you and I, Keith. It's an old school deal. And I can't tell too much about it just yet. I'm still finalizing a few things, but it's kind of a pet project of mine. It'll be out under English Channel. It's going to be a fun little show. It's going to be kind of like this. We'll do some video stuff as well. We've not done a lot of video with English Channel just because I'm ugly, and it works out better that way. But we will do some video stuff as well and kind of make it work that way. But a lot going on, a lot left to finish up for 2021. That's for sure. So,
Chris, I've really enjoyed talking to you today. I hope we can get a chance to do this again more often, because there's a lot of stuff that needs to be talked about in the world of bass fishing. Thanks for being with us, and take care.
Thank you, bud. Appreciate it. Really enjoyed it.
Young man, take a look at me now.